Welcome to Keep Traveling Your African Story, the only podcast that shares the real voices and journeys shaping African tourism. I'm your host, Rael Zieve, and I've been a part of the African tourism industry for over 20 years. Through my inbound tour operation, Keep Traveling, I've had the privilege of connecting travelers from all around the world with the magic of Africa. This podcast is my way of opening that world up to you, a place to learn about the people, properties, and opportunities that make travel across this continent so very special. Today, I'm delighted to introduce Sara Gardiner, who's the co-founder at Matetsi Victoria Falls, who joins me to share her story. Sara, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rael. Thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here.
Sara, for our international listeners, tell us, most people are going to know where Victoria Falls is, but tell us where Matetsi is in relation to the town itself.
Victoria Falls town, actually now a city, recent update, but yeah, Victoria Falls. The actual falls itself is really close to the city, and then we are just 40 minutes down the road, so pretty much heading west from Victoria Falls. The lodge is positioned on the banks of the Zambezi River on its own 136,000 acre private game reserve. It's about the same size as our neighboring national park.
And the neighboring national park, would that be the Zambezi National Park?
Exactly, Rael, exactly.
Okay, I'm familiar with the area, and obviously there's no fences between the national parks, right? So the game are transversing between the two parks?
Very much so. So both Zambezi National Park and Matetsi Private Game Reserve are actually part of the much wider Kaza Transfrontier Conservation Area. So that's the Okavango Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area that spans across 5 different countries. The idea is to bring down any fences that might be in that area so wildlife can roam freely across vast wilderness areas.
And while we're on that subject, let's talk about what guests can expect to see at the lodge itself while either on walking, driving, or boating safaris.
Around the lodge, we have smaller wildlife, so you might have the little bushbuck, the little bambies running around. At the moment, it's the beginning of our green season, so a lot of the babies have arrived, so it's baby bushbuck. Also the warthogs with their tiny baby warthogs, which is so adorable. Currently there's a litter of, I don't think it's a litter of 10, but there's a couple of moms that have come together with 10 baby warthogs that are running all around the lodge at the moment, which is beautiful. We may sometimes get elephants around the lodge area, as well as in the river. Guests are likely to see hippos. So our guests at breakfast this morning had the joy of having a hippo in the river grunting and chatting to them while they were enjoying their breakfast. That's just around the lodge. It's very much in nature, very much in this true wilderness area. And then out on game drive, and as you mentioned, we both do the walking safaris and the game drives. Because we're on a private concession, we're able to do both the morning and afternoon, evening game drives, and our guests in the evening can have a sundowner out in the bush and then the night drive back to camp. So the night drives open up a whole world of additional species. Daytime, you'd be seeing things like elephants. We get huge herds of buffalo here because of the nature of the landscape and where this area is located. Our guides will often come back, especially in the dry season, and say herds of 800 to 1,000. And it really isn't an exaggeration. It's quite remarkable. If we see herds of 200, 300, the team might say a small herd of buffalo. As our guides say, follow the buffalo to find the lion. And this happened exactly last week. We had an amazing, huge buffalo herd sighting the night before, and then the next morning it was lions on a kill. From a big cat's perspective, there are quite a number of leopards that are resident within the area. They are naturally quite shy creatures, so they can be quite elusive. As a family, we've been involved here for more than 10 years. What we've seen is the behavior of the wildlife has become much more relaxed, much more habituated. And as the wildlife see that we aren't a threat, they tap into more of a kind of curious behavior, which is really interesting to see. I mustn't forget to mention the giraffes. We have an incredible giraffe population on this concession. I think that's to do with the landscapes and the type of vegetation we have here. And your plains game, your wildebeest, your impala, your zebras, great populations of kudu. Then the nocturnal species, so that could be porcupines or serval, civet, the bush babies as well, a whole range of different species. On walking safaris is very much again about being in nature. For me, it's always about the birds, that slowing down and listening to what's around and that opportunity to connect more, a slower experience in nature.
Everyone always diverts to the big 5, but I want to test you a little bit and talk about the little 5 because that's quite an amazing setup in itself. You're familiar with the little 5?
I'm somewhat familiar. Now I'm feeling a bit nervous because I'm not a guide and I always wanted to defer to our amazing guiding team. But yeah, test me out, Rael.
Can you name the little 5 for us?
Yes, the little 5 are all based on the big 5 names. So we've got the buffalo weaver, we've got the leopard tortoise. I actually got to see a leopard tortoise last week and got very excited about seeing it. There's an ant lion, we've got the elephant shrew, which I have to be honest, I haven't seen, and then the rhino beetle. Of the big five, we have 4 of the big 5 here on property. So we have all of them except for rhino. We'd love to translocate rhino here in future. And then for the little 5, I think we have 4. I think the team have seen the rhino beetle. I don't think we've seen the elephant shrew. As a keen amateur birder, I feel like I should know if we see the buffalo weaver. I haven't seen it personally here, but I could check if it's in this area. And then, the ant lions, the leopard tortoise, we do get to see. Have you heard of the ugly 5?
I have. I was going to get there because you spoke already about the warthogs.
The ugly 5 I've heard of, and I think everyone interprets this in their own way, but the ones I've heard of are the warthog, the wildebeest, the hyena, and then the vulture. There's always a debate about which vulture it is, but I think it's the hooded vulture that takes the crown for the ugliest vulture. And then, of course, the marabou stork, an interesting looking bird. We've got all of those on property.
Sorry, you're way ahead of me. So well done for being able to recite that. But an Oxford graduate, I wouldn't expect anything less. So, I expected you to be able to recite those quite easily. So well done for that.
Thanks, Rael. Thanks. Our guiding team would be proud of me.
I want to just figure out how much further up from the falls are you as far as the river is concerned. So in other words, I know a river trip is quite difficult because of the rocks and everything like that.
Yeah.
But how far when the river's in flood, if you have a jet boat?
We don't traverse that route. It is about 30 kilometers. We feel we're fortunate that there's rapids along the way. And so on this section of river, because there's rapids, there's no through traffic. So it means in front of our guest suite, we don't do any boating activities, and there are no boating activities. I'm actually sitting in a guest suite and I'm looking onto the river, and it's super peaceful and tranquil, which is really beautiful.
I want to touch on also that part that you spoke about the buffalo, because I can remember that in the early days when I'd sit on a houseboat on Kariba at Elephant's Point or Gordon's Bay, which I'm sure you're familiar with, in the evenings those green plains would turn black from the thousands upon thousands of buffalo that came out. But it's so good to know that you are getting those populations in huge quantities back again.
It's super exciting to see. On Kariba by Matetsi National Park, I think unfortunately there was a lot of poaching and a lot of illegal hunting. And now there's such a positive presence there with Africa Parks, working with national parks in that area. And so having that positive human presence there means that the wildlife populations are coming back, which is fantastic. And that's what we've seen here on Matetsi Private Game Reserve as well. So in 2014, that's when we first got involved. There hadn't been a positive human presence. Same story here. There'd been a lot of poaching, there'd been a lot of illegal hunting, a lot of snare lines laid. It was a huge detriment to the wildlife population. The wildlife was essentially decimated. When we first came on property, I remember driving through and we saw one lonely skittish antelope. And I thought, the location is amazing. With a good road, you're 45 minutes from the falls, you've got access through all of these international airports. The landscape is so beautiful. This concession is along 15 kilometers of Zambezi River frontage. So it had all of the ingredients, but this one missing ingredient of where's the wildlife? It was this harsh realization that if there isn't positive human presence, if there isn't positive conservation work happening, then unfortunately these wildlife populations can be decimated. So we've done a huge amount from a conservation perspective. And I know we don't have 3 hours to talk about conservation, but in short, an amazing return of wildlife with those positive conservation efforts.
That sounds fantastic, but I do want to touch on the fishing side, because the fishing population is not doing very well. I visit the Zambezi often. That's my place. There's no other place that I like to be than fishing on the Zambezi. The problem with the fishing side is that you have the locals, mainly on the Zambian side, that are fishing, but they're not fishing correctly. They're using the wrong nets. They're not being educated in that sphere. Are you guys doing much, or have you done anything on those lines?
We have, Rael. From a conservation perspective, our focus is both on the land and on the river as well. We work to try to protect this 15 kilometers of river frontage. We do now have a patrol boat on the river, and that goes out daily lifting any illegal fishing net. We can confidently say that on the Zimbabwean side, we've been able to stop all illegal fishing activity. What is challenging on an international border is the laws and regulations around fishing, and what might be allowed on the other side of the international border can be different. But we do all that we can on the Zimbabwean side. I would say we've seen a definite improvement in the fish populations over the last 10 years. It is a tricky situation because for many people, fishing is their livelihood. And so it is trying to have conversations with those communities to say, can we do this more sustainably? Because having these tiny little fishing nets, that's not actually catching something that is sustenance, that's wiping out populations. So it is a continual journey. Recently, which is exciting, we've had guests that have been going fishing and catching decent sized bream, proper plate-sized bream, which is great to see and to know that there has been an improvement, because it used to just be the little guys.
You touched on the thing that, one, we're talking about international borders, but let's hope both the Zimbabwean authorities and the Zambian authorities, and of course you mentioned Africa Parks, which I think are doing a fantastic job, but it is about educating the locals to do things properly and perhaps subsidizing their food income with different bits and pieces to educate them how important tourism is going to be for them at the end of the day as well. So it's a long journey, but when I think about somebody like you that's pushing that right there on the ground, Sara, well done. You're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you, Rael. It's a real team effort. We have over 55 scouts in our team, in our anti-poaching team. So they do vehicle patrols, foot patrols, and the boat patrols as well. We do combined patrols with national parks. And in a day, including all of those, they'll cover over 250 kilometers distance-wise. It's vast areas that they're covering.
We haven't even touched on the accommodation. So let me put it bluntly, why should people come and stay at Matetsi?
In short, and this is going to sound very cheesy, Rael, once guests come to experience this, then they know what we're talking about. What we call the Matetsi magic. It's something that I can't quite put into words, but it's truly a very, very special part of the world. We've created this space to give our guests the opportunity to experience everything exceptional about our home country, Zimbabwe. And that's everything from the warm hospitality, and we pour such love into what we do. I was actually just chatting with guests before this call now, and to hear from them, their compliments, they're speaking about our team by name. They were like, Johnson's been looking after us so beautifully, and Andy's been amazing, and Courage, our safari guide, has shown us the most incredible time. We create a very personal experience for our guests and really want to show them the very best of what this part of the world has to offer. Having a combination of safari in this vast wilderness, the river experiences, we haven't even really talked about boat cruises, but as you say, we've got the boat cruises. Our food is also exceptional. Our guests say this. I'm very biased, obviously, but we get the most incredible feedback from our guests on our food experience.
Tell us a little bit about the accommodation and the amenities so that we can cover that as well.
So we have 16 suites all along the river, all with beautiful river views. And then we have 2 family suites, which are ideal for 2 adults and 2 children. And then we have 1 4-bedroom river house. So for a slightly bigger family that can become home away from home. They're all very spacious, air conditioned, very much a brick and mortar structure, which is quite different in the safari space. We've opted for that and gone with a very down-to-earth luxury. The contemporary African design taps into Zimbabwe. We really wanted to give our guests a sense of place, using a female Zimbabwean architectural designer, Zimbabwean artist, female and male Zimbabwean artisans to really create this little haven on the banks of the Zambezi.
Guests that are staying, they also want to be able to go and venture and do the crazy stuff at Vic Falls, the whitewater rafting, the bungee jumping and all that kind of stuff. Do you offer that complimentary transfer service?
We include our arrival and departure transfers within the Vic Falls area, and then we include a complimentary guided walking tour of the falls with the park's fees. So essentially we've tried to make our rates as fully inclusive as possible to make it as straightforward for our agents and our guests to book. We include that trip into town, and if guests want to add maybe a helicopter experience while they're there, or bungee jumping, there's the zip line, there's the gorge swing. Some guests will go and do a community visit. Some of our guests will also do whitewater rafting. So if they're going in on that one day to do the tour of the falls, then that's all fully inclusive. And then our team on property act as a mini concierge service. So we have our hosts. So if guests want to book anything additional, our guests can do that with our hosts on property.
That's fantastic. Sara, how does a PhD grad from Oxford University, and you can fill me in with what you graduated in, but how do you end up back in the bush?
I love that you mentioned Kariba earlier, Rael. So as a family, I'm actually Harare born. So I'm a city girl originally. And we were very fortunate as a family to spend a lot of time in the bush together. I have a twin brother, and when he and I were little, our family would go up to Mana Pools. Almost every October, we'd go and spend about a month up on the banks of the Zambezi River. When we got a bit older, teenage years, we spent a lot of time on Kariba, on the houseboats on Kariba, which you mentioned, an amazing experience. And we got to do safaris in different areas. We also went to the Delta, and we had an experience of a safari camp in the Delta and another one in Madikwe. Having had those experiences, we thought, wouldn't it be amazing to do something like this in our home country, Zimbabwe, and to be able to showcase all those things that we fell in love with. I had the great fortune of studying over in the UK, somehow fell into doing a PhD in physical and theoretical chemistry.
Anybody that knows anything about that knows that you're not just a pretty face, you've got a brain on your shoulders as well. I know that I'm talking to a clever one here today. Well done for that, and that you found your way back to Zim.
Home is where the heart is.
What do guests always rave about after having left or leaving Matetsi?
Top of the list is definitely our team and that warm hospitality. I think and you know it, Rael, there's something about Zimbabwean hospitality. It's within our community, within ourselves, it's hard to understand that real, genuine hospitality and that love for what we do and that love to share our part of the world. So that's top of the list. And then I think guests expect to see the Zambezi and to feel that sense of peace. They expect to see wildlife, and they do see that. And when they see the falls, they expect to be wowed by that. I think what is surprising for guests is how incredible our food experience is. That's something we've taken very seriously since we opened. We all know that food is the way to our guests' heart, and we have an exceptional chef team on property here. Hospitality and dining experiences.
Listen, I want to touch on the Zimbabwean hospitality, because when I arrived back in Zimbabwe just about a month ago, and immigration officials all over the world are probably the very meanest or inhospitable people wherever you go, wherever you go. But the Zimbabwean guy looked at my passport and he says, "Where have you been? Why are you not back here?" So you were landing back in Zim.
It's funny you say that. I mentioned I was just speaking with guests before our call, and they said even when they were arriving here at Customs and Immigration, how warm and welcoming the team they were, which was super, super special. And look, I don't think that being an immigration official is the funnest job in the world, so I don't expect them to be cheery, but it is wonderful when you can get that warm welcome from the moment you land in destination.
Sara, you've spoke about your staff. Is there one particular person amongst your staff that just really stands out from where they've come from to where they are to where you perceive them to be going in life, that really just makes a difference?
It's interesting you asked that. I was asked to do a talk on conservation a couple of years ago, and I actually presented it as not another conservation talk, and I shared our conservation achievements and then spent the next 20 minutes telling the stories of 6 or 8 different individuals in our team. They were just a handful of the remarkable stories and the remarkable experiences that they've had here and what this land has given to them. I'm actually going to take this opportunity to put a shout out to a young lady called Lynn, and she may not even be someone that guests would necessarily meet. Lynn joined us actually just a year ago now. It's her first job ever, and she appeared here with this incredible energy and enthusiasm and excitement, and she loves being in nature and she loves the bush. So she is part of our housekeeping team. She looks after all of our public spaces, so she's always seen around everywhere. We have a worker of the month and worker of the year, and this young woman got worker of the year out of a staff complement, over 200 team members on staff, and this particular young woman really shone. So I want to put a shout out to Lynn, who brings everything that we love. It's that real, genuine, exceptional hospitality is one of our values here, and she embodies that. I hope that this is just the beginning of her career, but she's a woman that I can see going places for sure.
Sara, if a guest could take away a feeling and you could put that feeling into 3 different words after having left you, what would those 3 words be?
I would say the one word which for me is very powerful is a real love. So love and peacefulness. And what would the other one be? Oh, this is a hard question. I would say inspiration. So love, peace, and inspiration. And that inspiration is being inspired to do something quite special, creating a sense of magic in whatever they might be doing in their own spaces and in their own worlds.
Sara, in finishing off, where can people find you online and follow your story?
Very easy. The property's full name is Matetsi Victoria Falls. And so we are on Facebook, Instagram. If you Google us, we should be the top hit. We've worked hard to get our story out there. And if guests are more interested in our conservation work and our community work, they can go to Grace Foundation, gracezw.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sara, for sharing your story. It's been really nice chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time and for your energy.
And you as well, Rael. Great to connect with a fellow Zimbabwean and share about our part of the world.
What a knowledgeable conversation. Thank you so much, Sara, for sharing your story and for everything you're doing to grow African tourism. Don't forget, every week we feature fantastic prize giveaways from some of Africa's most beautiful lodges, camps, and travel partners. You could win your own unforgettable getaway just by listening, subscribing, or visiting www.keeptraveling.africa/podcast. To enter or to read more about today's guest, head over to today's show notes of this episode or visit our website. Don't forget to follow Keep Traveling on social media for the latest episodes, stories, and travel inspiration. I'm Rael Zieve, and this has been Keep Traveling, your African story. Remember, a few years from now, you won't remember how much it cost you, but you'll always remember the memories you made. Keep traveling.